others say, thank God it's a Friday. For the business people will definitely agree that it's time for you to refresh your mind over the weekend. It is a Friday to all the viewers, and good morning. This is Smart Means Business. My name is Jerome Paul Sonko.
And Rita Cabanyero. Good morning indeed. How are you doing? Please make sure that you be a part of the show that is here to make sure your day shines brighter as you conquer that business, as you improve your stakes and your income.
And of course, we are dedicated to making sure that everything about your morning is definitely quite different from all the angles that you'll be fitting in. Well, besides that, we look at all details regarding the business. And in today's show, we're going to look at the Know Your Customer project, looking at how banking institutions can definitely synchronize the issues to do with the National Registration Authority to make sure that they can get the accounts of people registered fully. And also we shall be looking at fire outbreaks in schools, what impact and how far is the Ministry of Education going to deal with this particular case. We shall also be looking at substandard communication devices in Uganda and how UCC is actually fighting fake products on the market. We shall also be looking at youth empowerment, among which also looking at the post-lockdown for the bar owners. And also in today's topic of discussion, we shall be looking at talent management and the entertainment sector.
Not forgetting that we bring to you an inspiration or motivation every day. That is the ranging from our quotes of the day around here, business quotes. We have got a business tip for you, so make sure you be a part of it. Do not miss it out. And speaking about what you expect within the day, don't miss out on our weather forecast, where we bring to you what you anticipate in your region or in any areas you're living at, to make sure you be a part to know what weather forecast shall be. Shall it be shiny, raining? So make sure you be a part of that.
All right, and we shall also be looking at the SMB across borders to let you know what is making headlines across the international scene and on the African continent, for you to keep up to speed with all information and details regarding business.
And speaking of that, now let us head into our SMB first report that is making out in the business community, where you have to know your customer project. Now, banks and financial institutions have been urged to update customer records within with the NINI, and the stakeholders in the banking sector and financial services have been made to discuss and agree on the electronic way on how to know your customer project. Now, this initiative was launched in 2019 and involved the electronic Know Your Customer platform for all supervised financial institutions to connect to NIRA and the database to make sure transit and transmission verifications and all requests are securely there. Let us have a look on this one. We do return to discuss on it.
Users are also managed by the financial institution, and this is the part where we make sure that the person trying to...
In 2020, the Bank of Uganda, in collaboration with Uganda Bankers Association, National Identification and Registration Authority, and Financial Sector Deepening Uganda, signed a contract with fintech company Laboremus Uganda to develop a digital ID verification system to be used by all banks and other licensed financial service providers in the country.
And then this is a customer doing it themselves. Take a photo, and then a lot of verifications are starting to happen in the background. The collection of location information.
The technical infrastructure will enable the supervised financial institutions to update records of their customers with the national identification number and electronically validate the identity of their customers using their national identity number for new account opening and transaction validations.
It is my honor to welcome you to the stakeholder engagement. FSD Uganda is proud to have supported the electronic KYC verification initiative in the country in partnership with the Bank of Uganda and the Uganda Bankers Association. When I look around this room, I see familiar faces. Faces with whom FSD Uganda has spent hours discussing and debating the importance of eKYC to the twin goals of National Development Plan 3 that is financial inclusion and the digital economy. True financial inclusion means providing people, businesses with meaningful savings, credit, insurance, payments, and long-term pension products. Each of these products need KYC verification and authentication. Therefore, identification, especially real-time identification, which is what we call electronic KYC, is the fundamental rail on which the entire financial sector rests.
In a separate interview with the Smart 24 television, the Executive Director Laboremas, Timothy Msoke, says that this initiative will reduce fraud and time people spend while opening up bank accounts.
Basically, enable financial institutions reduce the turnaround time of delivering their services, like opening an account. Today, it can take several days, hours, sometimes even weeks to fully open an account. What we do is help them shorten that period from so many days to just a few minutes. The other thing we help financial institutions with is reduce the time they take to give a loan. Today's loans can even take up to 3 months. But why is it taking 3 months? Not because the financial institution does not want to give you the loan quickly. It's just following regulations to verify all the information they need in order to process that loan efficiently. So we help them reduce that time from, say, 3 months to also just a matter of days.
Financial institutions are responsible for ensuring that they do their customer due diligence. Once these processes are marred by delays, by paper-based authentication, it makes the processes so costly for the financial services to provide these products, and therefore they feel that they cannot provide these services to low-income earners. It's not viable for them to do so. On the demand side, if a customer requires so much documentation and it takes a very long time for them to open an account, it discourages them from accessing financial services. They would rather keep their money in their pillowcase at home.
Banking is based on trust. Trust starts with establishing a person's identity. The National ID Verification Solutions allows supervised financial institutions to trust that a customer's identity is correct regardless of where the customer was boarded. The system would therefore be using NIRA's existing records and the National ID card system to help banks validate the identity of existing and prospective customers. Specifically, the system checks whether the Ugandan national ID details match with those in the NIRA database.
It is the first piece, the ability to verify the identity of a customer anywhere, anytime. So financial institutions use this, for instance, to open an account for a person in a village in Ugulu or a person in a village in Kanungu. Because as you get out of Kampala, the number of branches that a bank has also decreases. People sometimes have to walk 50 miles to find a bank branch. But with our technology that we have collaborated on with the Central Bank as well as the Uganda Bankers Association, it enables you to open an account to that person. It's an element of fraud, obviously, whenever it comes to identity. Some people have fake IDs. So this platform enables you to validate that ID. Now, Laboremas, the platform it has built belongs to the financial institutions or the banks. Now, what happens when you collect the information of the ID for a customer? That platform enables the financial institution to send that information to the National ID Registration Authority to validate the authenticity of that information. So this is a partnership between Central Bank, between Uganda Bankers Association and its members.
The verification happens automatically and in seconds. Additionally, the solution verifies directly against the source database as opposed to the existing procedures involved manual checks of the Electoral Commission database. Onboarded banks use the platform during the customer onboarding, account opening and loan organizing processes.
eKYC is the minimum requirement for onboarding any customer to access any financial service. be it a savings account or a credit account, investment or pensions, the minimum that is required from a customer is the ability of the financial institution to verify their identity. We know that lack of formal identification is one of the biggest challenges affecting access to finance, most especially for low-income earners, for women, people in the rural areas, disabled people, refugees, and the youth.
You heard in the session there are very many new technologies now being deployed, and as an industry we welcome them, of course wearing the usual risk hat so that we are sure in the process there are no fraudulent weak points. But we are embracing these things and we will keep leveraging on them and releasing them across our membership. Our strategy as an association is to leverage on shared infrastructure. That way, you run on the rails while the member banks concentrate and focus on their core areas and don't have to duplicate technology which is available. This is a strategy the association and the industry has taken on, and as we get on, we will be enabling more functions and to ease the account opening process.
The project commenced in November 2019 and currently there are 25 supervised financial institutions connected to the system successfully. Electronic KYC is a critical fundamental component for Uganda's banking and financial industry towards building a robust digital economy ecosystem in line with the National Development Plan 3 objectives. Pedson Mumbere, Smart 24 TV.
Thank you, Pedson Mumber there. And of course, knowing your customer will always make it easy for your business to thrive out there. And to the end user, if you're not included electronically now, as the generation is changing, as the move of digitalization is, leading the way, as financial inclusivity is also paving way for most people's lives or most people's living to also be improved, you shouldn't be really left out in case of any of these programmings come your way, or in case you hear about them. At least you should try to embrace them, because for one thing I know that if you're included financially, if you're able to access financial services anywhere, anytime and in real time, that means you're good to go. I mean, you don't have any limitations, but the major challenge has been always even the people, the low-income earners, they know maybe the services exist, but do not know to tap into, that platform or that ecosystem of financial services. But with the regulations, with this project here of electronically including people, but the challenge comes again. If you're not registered with the national NIRA, that is the National Registration Authority, if you're not recognized, if you are going to be part of the financial inclusivity or part of the financial inclusion, you're going to be limited. Because now, when you look at one of the requirements here that the banks need to embrace, that if you need to embrace from the bank, you realize the NIN is part of it. That is the National Identification Number. So if you do not have that, you're going to be facing a lot of challenges. But it shouldn't stop you really from again embracing some of the financial inclusion services.
Well, and furthermore, this was initiated, this initiative was launched in 2019, an electronic Know Your Customer project, which is to enhance banking institutions' activities amongst the clients. Well, I've actually also faced such a scenario before at a bank, whereby my very first account was a student's account. So they actually say, if at all you're supposed to, they keep on sending messages if at all you have a student's account, because with the student's account you normally open it up with the student's ID. But now, according to the new rules that that actually are governing the banking institutions and financial institutions, is that you make sure that every information regarding the client is got by his, he's supposed to present his name, because at least there the country can still track, government can track everything from, let's say, from his national ID, look at his passport, now look at his bank account. It becomes very easy for someone's records to be traced.
Indeed, because the national ID entails a lot. It has got your village, it has got your sub-county, it has got maybe can you trust the next of kin? That's not
Yes,
there.
they
But
trust your
in the
parents
system,
during,
because
the
when you
registration
registered, when you registered, you put a next of kin, so it is able to trace you out. So electronically, or this electronic KYC project is going to be grateful, but also it needs now the players in this ecosystem of financial inclusivity, or
and actually the good thing is that the banking institutions have been pushing for it. Even when you go to the bank now and maybe you want to withdraw a certain amount of money, they will ask for your NIN number, your national ID, because they want to safeguard individuals from, let's say, theft of, let's say, people's savings and all that. Before you make any deposit, all that, you need to present your NIN number. And the reason that's why they're looking at it in an electronic
your
manner.
NIN.
Your NIN. Again, I've crashed on that one. So you need to present your NIN, and then not only your NIN, you need to also present most of the details regarding you and your NIN.
And that is for the bank, Joram. You will realize that how many people, how many low-income earners can access banks. You find there is still a limited number for people to go to the bank, access services around there. So that means financial players who are providing financial services, who are making sure that people get services on their digital platforms, have a role to play here, going to their customers, because even this know your customer is a detail that is a requirement for those players to have. Because if you do not know your customer really, if you can't determine your market, if you can't determine your audience, which product or which service are you going to design for them, so they've got a role to play. Let them go out there, find out what is missing from the people, from their end user, and make sure that everything is conjoined and integrated. That's the only way people are going to embrace such services. Otherwise, if we leave it to the bank, it's going to be left and worked on at some point.
All right, and the banks and financial institutions are updating records of their customers with the NIN. So when you go to the bank and you're asked to do so, please agree and let everything move on smoothly. But still, with the SNB reports, let's now take a look at the fire outbreaks in schools as the ministry comes out with several measures to reduce the cases. Concerning fire outbreaks that have been taking place time to time in boarding schools, the Ministry of Education has come out with several major measures that will help to reduce the number of fire outbreaks in these respective schools. The PRO Ministry of Education, Dr. Dennis Mujimba, while addressing the media at the Uganda Media Center, said that they have identified so far 6 school cases ever since the reopening of the schools this year, and reports say 5 are private schools and 1 is government schools. Let's have the details here. The Public Relations Officer, Ministry of Education, Dr. Dennis Mujimba, while addressing the media at the Uganda Media Center, says that they have identified that fires in schools happen seasonally. Since schools reopened, they have had reports of 6 school fires. Dr. Dennis says that their role is not to investigate, but is to do preliminary status investigations to know which schools and what property is destroyed.
We have identified is that number 1, there seems to be a trend or seasons when these fires come up. Since the year began, since we opened, that is on January 10th, we've had reports of at least 6 school fires. Investigations are always done by the police. For us as a ministry, we simply do the preliminary status investigations to know which school is it, what property or lives have been affected, but we do not investigate as a ministry to determine the cause. The determination of cause is a responsibility of other arms of government supported by the police force and the National Building Review Board, which is under the Ministry of Works.
Dr. Mujimba says that in 2008, government through the Uganda Security Force issued a circular to all schools on how to specifically address school fires and ensure safety and security in the education system of learning. He says that the pattern by the time schools that were affected with fires are private schools, among which only 1 is government.
In 2008, government through the Uganda Police Force issued a circular to all schools on how to specifically address school fires and ensure safety and security in our education institutions of learning. We realized it was not an issue of only safety against fires, but also the dimension of security, because at that time, police force identified that most of these causes were not accidental, but appeared to have intentionality behind them. The pattern at that time showed that schools which were mostly affected were private schools. Even this year, since January when we reopened, out of the 6 schools that have been affected by fires, 5 of them are private schools. Only 1 is government. So there is a trend we are seeing of increased incidence of fires in private schools.
Dr. Mujimba reminded private schools to publicly display to the parents and visitors as well as the students. He continues and says that the nature of fires has not changed, though the government had put measures because the alleged causes seem to be the same.
Private schools publicly display to the parents, to visitors, the permits of occupancy are given to that school to allow that this infrastructure should be permitted to use by the public. Since 2008, this is almost 14 years, the nature of fires has not changed. And the alleged causes seem to be the same. What has changed is that schools forget, some do not even know that the ministry issued guidelines on school security and safety. In those 14 years, you've had headmasters transferred, you have teachers transferred, you have parents who were part of the security and safety committees in schools move on, because once children graduated from those schools, new members came on board and they also don't know about these guidelines. So as a ministry, we are going to resaturate these guidelines to all schools and also avail them on our ministry website.
Well, with that particular one, you could see the ministry is coming up with a lot of guidelines, but clearly one of which is private schools have been urged to display security measures and also let the parents know of any security threat at school so that the parents can be secure with
I mean, I'm smiling because these
to
reports are coming in as the schools reopened. I mean, the rate at which schools are getting on fire wasn't that much high if you compare with the recent years. This is happening after the reopening of schools post-COVID-19. And one of public concerns, and these are allegations really from the public, that maybe some students didn't want, you know, they were forced to go back to school. So they are just allegations.
Because students can easily adapt to school after 2 weeks.
Yes, and they could be among the reasons. Another is that, you know, there is because it's a private entity, some people, yes, some people are in land confliction, the owners of the school, maybe with the neighbors or with, so you find there is a lot of conflictions at some point. So another reason could also go to that. Maybe the other people, the other party could probably want to ban the school so that you get disorganized. At the end of the day, you're going to find your way out.
Or there is also a small percentage of whereby the outbreak may be due to, let's say, mismanagement in school, maybe from the kitchen area, because we do believe from the kitchen is where the fire.
But when you see these reports that are always coming, the schools, the burning, the flames start actually from either the dormitory. So I don't believe that a kitchen is closer to the dormitory.
That's why I say the small percentage, the least percentage.
And
so
if it is coming from the kitchen and the kitchen is still stable, then that is not really. But you're right, you could be right. Flames could pass over, you know, maybe you could fly and then find their way to the dormitory.
Like I said, it's still on the least percentage because I do believe schools do set these kitchens, like you said, far away from the dormitories for the safety as a matter of fact.
But as I conclude on this one, Joram, I still believe even when the school is able to display security and we are not conscious as people who are governing the school, we should at least try to be in maybe good relations with the neighbors, good relations with the parents, good relations with students. How do you treat each other? Because at some point, these three entities might collide and one might not be working out, and perhaps, or even the just users, passerbys, or anyone who could be a passerby could just admire your school and tend to just set it on fire as an enemy. Anyways, I hope the distraction really gets in line and everything goes back effectively.
Well, and when you look at that, there are very many key stakeholders in schools, from the parents, the students themselves, as well as the ministry, and almost everyone who supplies to the school. So once the fires come on board, they tend to put an effect and impact greatly on businesses around the community, around the school, and even the students themselves. But with that, we do take a break and we shall return with the SMB Across Borders.